Good morning to everybody. My name is Enrico Bisogno. I work at UNODC, which is the office of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, based in Vienna. My responsibility there is to develop and disseminate statistics, data on crime and drugs at the global level. Today, I would like to talk to you a bit about the SDG framework, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals framework, very briefly, and then what can be the contribution of victimization surveys in this framework. You might know that the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by the General Assembly in New York last year in 2015 with a very formal, a very extremely complex, at the end of an extremely complex but rich debate. 17 goals, 169 targets, and then after that there was a long, again a very rich discussion on the indicators to monitor the progress on these many goals, many targets, and there was a specific goal, goal 16, which really goal 16 is about peace, justice, security, rule of law, access to justice, which attracted a lot of attention. And at the beginning, in the debate, political debate on the targets, but also then on the indicators. These are difficult topics to monitor, to measure. But they are quite relatively new in the statistical sphere. But there was, again, thanks to the contribution of statistical offices, international agencies, but many NGOs also, and researchers, academics. At the end, there was found an agreement of a set of indicators which we believe is good. It's not perfect, but provides already a good baseline, a good set of metrics that can be used to know how the world is making progress or not, how the countries, whether the countries are doing good work or not. And so there are indicators, targets on violence, targets on on access to justice, targets on corruption, and others. But specifically on these three targets, I believe that the role of victimization surveys is key. It's absolutely key. How much violence do we have in our countries? How much sexual, physical, psychological violence? This kind of information we can get only through surveys, only when asking people. And for other sources of data, like police data or other sources from the criminal justice system, we know they don't capture the entire, all the experience of violence. We know this very well. That's in most cases, but this is across all countries in the world, people do not report to the police what happens if they are victims of any form of violence. So we have to rely on surveys. And victimization surveys are there. It's a tool that has been developed many years ago, and of course many countries, many researchers have contributed, and now I think we have a very solid tool to collect information, again, for example, starting on violence, which is a key indicator of the SDGs. And so through the victimization surveys, we can know much, we can, again, collect information on how violence is, what is the prevalence of violence in our countries. And not only the overall level, which is important, but also, and this is where surveys are also very important, to know who are the victims, the sex, the age, the location, but then also the social background, the education background, and so on. So these are, you should always, this is key to understand what is who is affected mostly by violence in our countries. And so only surveys can do this. And this is also response to a key principle of the SDG framework, which is don't leave anyone behind, no one behind. So we need to know really which are the population groups, the vulnerable groups that are more at risk of violence. Another element is the important element is access to justice. Access to justice, another element of the SDG. And there is an interesting, very interesting indicator, is the reporting rate. Whether people report their experience of their negative experience of violence to authorities or not. And this is we see that there are different levels from across countries, different levels by the type of crime. And again, this is an indicator that can be produced only exclusively by when we ask people, again, through victimization surveys. Another indicator is corruption. Only a few years ago, it was difficult to imagine to have a target on corruption. So to agree, to have all the countries, all governments to agree that they want to be measured on whether there is corruption or not in their country. Now we have it, and we have the target. We have also two indicators, actually. One for prevalence of bribery among the population, one among the business sector. And victimization surveys are there, exactly to also to provide this kind of information. So I think these three elements should be these three topics, and then indicators, and then of course the questionnaires and the core questions that are there behind these indicators are really fundamental, should be really considered in victimization surveys. And in the framework of the SDG monitoring, it's important to say also another thing, is that we are one of the main objectives is to monitor progress. So we need to know whether countries are making progress or not. So, which means that we should be not only include this, produce this data once, but we should make a system that allow countries to monitor this through time. So on a continuous basis. So this is an important element when we make our plans, our statistical master plans. We have to be able at country level. We should be able to produce this data on a continuous basis. Is it every year? Is it every 2 years or every 3 years? But we have to take that into account so that we have to be able to monitor the change. Are we doing better or not? This is an element that we more and more statistics have to be planned also in the long term. It's not only one-off exercise. We need to, the value also of data is when we can put one data beside the other, so we can compare. We can compare trends, we can compare countries. And in this, I think it's important that the countries take into account what is already available out there. So really a strong plea to use a lot of international standards that have been produced. For example, in the Latin American region, Latin American Caribbean region, through the exercise, through a good technical process, we have been able to produce a standard questionnaire of victimization surveys, the VicLab questionnaire. And this is so, it's important that countries try to comply, to use this standard as much as they can. Also because this questionnaire is complying fully with the international classification of crime for statistical purposes. So it's important that we try in our efforts at the national level to produce data for monitoring the performance of each country. Also to comply with not to reinvent the wheel, but to rely on what the excellent work that has been done at international level by experts to produce these standards. So let's try to follow as much as possible the VicLab or LACSI questionnaire. Let's try really to incorporate in all our data production the ICCS, the International Crime Classification, so that we produce data on a solid basis for monitoring the performance of our countries, and also in an international framework, so that we are also able to benchmark our country with our neighboring countries, with other regions in a solid way. So thanks a lot for your attention. I will stop here. Again, we really hope that this, within the SDG framework, we will have a strong push to produce more victimization surveys, to have them always more and more based on international standards, and have them on a more and more regular basis in our countries to make sure that we really make progress in all these aspects. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.